My Thanksgiving dinner was a masterpiece, a culinary olive branch meant to win over my mother-in-law. But her single brutal sentence turned the feast into a battlefield, and I was ready to burn it all down. The smell of roasting turkey, sage, and thyme was supposed to be my triumph. For 2 weeks, my apartment had been a command center for what I dubbed Operation Thanksgiving Supremacy. I'd brined the 22-pound bird for 48 hours. I'd made the cranberry sauce from scratch with fresh oranges and a hint of ginger. And the sourdough stuffing I was famous for was currently making the entire house smell like heaven. This wasn't just a meal, it was a masterpiece, a culinary olive branch, and my annual attempt to finally win over my mother-in-law, Carol. My husband, Liam, thought I was insane. "Honey, you don't have to do all this," he'd said, watching me meticulously peel 24 pearl onions. "We could just order a catered meal. No one would care." But he was wrong. I would care. And more importantly, Carol would care. She would see it as a failing, another piece of evidence in her long-running case against me. The people versus the woman who isn't good enough for my perfect son. For 5 years, I had weathered her storm of passive aggression. My home was cozy, but a bit small for entertaining, isn't it? My job as a graphic designer was a cute little hobby. The way I dressed was certainly unique. Each comment was a tiny paper cut, insignificant on its own, but together they had left me bleeding emotionally. Liam, bless his conflict-avoidant heart, would always say, "That's just how she is," or "She doesn't mean it like that." But I knew better. Every word was a meticulously crafted dart, and I was her permanent dartboard. This year, however, was supposed to be different. This year, I had the home field advantage. For the first time, Liam had convinced his family to have Thanksgiving at our place. His sister, Jessica, the golden child, had just had her second baby and couldn't host. Carol had grumbled, of course, suggesting a restaurant, but Liam stood firm. It was our turn, and I was going to knock it out of the park. I wasn't just cooking a meal. I was serving up a steaming platter of competence and proving, once and for all, that I was a capable, loving wife and a worthy member of their family. By 3 o'clock, the whole clan had arrived. The air was thick with the scent of my hard work and the low hum of family chatter. My father-in-law gave me a warm hug. Jessica barely looked up from her phone, and Carol swept into my kitchen with the critical eye of a health inspector. She picked a loose piece of celery from my chopping board. "A bit stringy, don't you think?" she murmured, before tossing it into the trash. I just smiled, a tight, brittle smile I had perfected over the years. "It softens in the stuffing, Carol, don't worry." I spent the next hour like a whirlwind, pulling pans from the oven, mashing potatoes until they were fluffy clouds, and whisking a gravy so rich and glossy it could have been on a magazine cover. I decanted everything into my best serving dishes, the ones we got for our wedding that I was always too scared to use. The table looked magnificent. The turkey was golden brown, glistening under the dining room lights. The sweet potato casserole, topped with a perfectly toasted marshmallow crust, sat next to a vibrant green bean almondine. It was perfect, a fortress of culinary perfection that not even Carol could breach. Liam, seeing the spread, wrapped his arms around my waist from behind and kissed my cheek. "You did it, babe. It looks incredible. You're incredible." His praise was a balm on my frayed nerves. For a moment, I allowed myself to feel a swell of pride. I saw the look on the faces of the nieces and nephews, their eyes wide with hunger. I heard Jessica's husband let out a low whistle. Maybe this was it. Maybe this was the year. We all sat down. Liam was at the head of the table, beaming. I was next to him, feeling a nervous flutter in my stomach. He tapped his glass with a knife, getting everyone's attention. "I just want to say a quick word," he began, his voice warm and full. "I want to thank everyone for coming to our home today. But most of all, I want to thank my amazing wife." He turned to me, his eyes full of genuine love. She poured her entire heart and soul into this meal for all of us. She's the most nurturing, caring person I know, and she takes care of all of us in so many ways. We are so lucky to have her. My eyes started to well up. It was the most beautiful public declaration of support he'd ever given me in front of his family. The paper cuts, the little digs, the years of feeling inadequate, it all started to fade away. I looked across the table at Carol, hoping to see a glimmer of warmth, a nod of agreement, anything. She was smiling, but it was a cold, thin-lipped smile that didn't reach her eyes. She picked up her wine glass, swirling the deep red liquid. Then, in a voice that was clear and carried across the suddenly quiet table, she looked right at me and delivered the single sentence that would change everything. It's a shame all that nurturing is wasted on a meal, isn't it? Since there won't be any grandchildren from this side of the family. The clatter of a fork hitting a plate echoed in the sudden cavernous silence. It was Jessica's. She had frozen mid-bite, a piece of green bean dangling from the tines. Every eye was on me. Every face held a different shade of shock, pity, or in the case of Liam's father, deep discomfort. But my eyes were locked on Carol. She met my gaze with a serene, almost beatific expression, as if she had just offered a blessing instead of slitting my soul open right there at the dinner table. The words hung in the air, thick and poisonous. Wasted nurturing. No grandchildren. It wasn't a passive-aggressive paper cut, it was a surgical strike, aimed directly at the most painful private wound Liam and I shared. 2 years of doctor's appointments, invasive tests, hope that curdled into monthly heartbreak, all reduced to a casual, cruel dinner table zinger. All my effort, the 22-pound turkey, the gravy I'd whisked until my arm ached, it was all just a prop for her little psychodrama, a way to highlight my greatest failure in front of the whole family. My first instinct was to look at Liam, my husband, my partner, my defender. I turned to him, my vision blurring with unshed tears, my heart screaming for him to say something, to stand up, to tell his mother how vile, how utterly unforgivable her comment was. He was staring at her, his face pale. His mouth opened, then closed. He looked at me, his expression a miserable cocktail of apology and panic. He was a statue, paralyzed between the woman he married and the woman who raised him. And in his silence, I got my answer. He wasn't going to choose me, he was just going to hope the storm passed. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't loud or violent. It was a quiet, cold, clean break. The part of me that had spent 5 years trying, hoping, and caring simply ceased to exist. The grief I felt was instantly flash-frozen into a solid block of glacial rage. The tears evaporated before they could fall. My spine straightened. I looked back at Carol, whose smug little smile was just beginning to falter with confusion at my lack of a hysterical breakdown. Slowly, deliberately, I placed my napkin on the table. I pushed my chair back, the sound of its legs scraping against the floor a jarring shriek in the quiet room. "You know what, Carol?" I said, my voice steady and unnervingly calm. "You're right." I didn't wait for a response. I turned and walked into the kitchen. I could feel their eyes on my back. I opened the pantry and pulled out the huge stack of Tupperware containers I'd bought just for the occasion, for sending them all home with leftovers. The irony was so bitter, it almost made me laugh. I heard Liam get up from the table, his footsteps hesitant behind me. "Honey, what are you doing?" I ignored him. I went to the dining room table, picked up the magnificent platter holding the turkey, and carried it back to the kitchen counter. I grabbed my sharpest carving knife. Jessica gasped. "Oh my God, what is she doing? Mom, she's lost it." I began to carve the turkey with a chilling efficiency. Slice after slice of perfect white meat went into the largest container. I scraped every last bit of my famous sourdough stuffing into another. The jewel-toned cranberry sauce, the gravy boat, the fluffy mashed potatoes, one by one, they were transferred from my beautiful wedding china into cheap, unforgiving plastic. I was disassembling my masterpiece, reclaiming every ounce of effort, every moment of wasted nurturing. I worked in silence. The only sounds the scrape of the serving spoon against ceramic and the snap of plastic lids sealing shut. The family remained frozen at the table, watching this bizarre, silent spectacle unfold. They were prisoners at a feast that was vanishing before their eyes. I packed the sweet potato casserole, making sure to get an even distribution of the toasted marshmallow topping. I packed the green beans. I packed the Parker House rolls I had baked from scratch that morning. I was a machine of methodical fury. Finally, Liam found his voice again, stepping fully into the kitchen and grabbing my arm. His touch felt foreign, unwelcome. "Babe, stop, please. This is embarrassing. You're making a scene." I stopped what I was doing and slowly turned to face him. I looked at his hand on my arm, then up into his pleading, desperate eyes. "She didn't mean it like that," he whispered, his voice cracking. You're overreacting. Let's just go back to the table. Please, we can talk about this later." Overreacting? I repeated the word, and it tasted like ash in my mouth. My voice was dangerously low, a stark contrast to the frantic energy with which I'd been packing. I pulled my arm from his grasp, not with a jerk, but with a slow, deliberate motion that communicated a finality he couldn't miss. "She announced to our entire family that my womb is a wasteland, and you think I'm overreacting?" His face crumpled. "No, of course not, but she's my mother. She's from a different generation. She doesn't understand." "She understands cruelty, Liam. She's fluent in it. And you're her interpreter, always trying to soften the translation for me. But I heard her perfectly clear this time." I looked past him, into the dining room where Carol was now standing, a mixture of indignation and alarm warring on her face. Her perfect Thanksgiving was being dismantled, and the power dynamic she'd cultivated for years was shifting under her feet. "This is ridiculous," Carol finally snapped, her voice shrill. "I made a simple observation. If you're this sensitive, perhaps you're not cut out for motherhood anyway." That was it. The final shovel of dirt on the grave of any relationship we might have had. The rage inside me, which had been a cold, solid block, began to melt into something hot and molten. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I smiled. It was a terrifying, hollow smile that didn't touch my eyes. "You know, you're right about another thing, Carol," I said, my voice carrying into the dining room. "This nurturing is wasted here." I snapped the last lid onto the last container of food. I stacked them methodically into 2 large, reusable grocery bags I pulled from under the sink. Every single morsel of the feast, my 2 weeks of planning, shopping, and cooking, was now packed away. The magnificent dining table was a wasteland of empty platters, stray crumbs, and smeared serving spoons. All that was left was the dinner rolls in a basket and a half-empty pitcher of water. I hefted the heavy bags, one in each hand. The weight felt good, righteous. It was the physical manifestation of my love and labor, and I was taking it back. I walked past Liam, who stood there looking utterly defeated, and stopped at the head of the dining room table. I surveyed the stunned faces. Jessica was clutching her pearls. Her husband looked like he wanted to be anywhere else on earth, and Liam's father was staring at his empty plate as if it held the secrets to the universe. "Well," I said, my voice bright and cheerful, a jarring imitation of a perfect hostess, "it seems dinner is over. I hope you all saved room for whatever you have at home. Liam, feel free to offer them the bread basket." I turned and walked towards the front door. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay in that apartment, in that atmosphere of casual cruelty, for one more second. Each step felt lighter than the last. I could hear Liam scrambling behind me, his voice a panicked whisper. "Where are you going? You can't just leave. This is our family." I reached the front door and pulled it open, letting in a gust of cold November air. It felt like the first clean breath I'd taken in years. "No, Liam," I said, turning to look him in the eye one last time before stepping out. This is your family. You chose them, and I am choosing me. I stepped into the hallway and let the door swing shut behind me, the click of the latch sounding like a gavel. I was halfway to the elevator when I heard the door to our apartment fly open. It wasn't Liam. It was his sister Jessica. Her face was flushed, her expression livid. "You can't be serious," she shrieked, her voice echoing down the empty hall. "You're just going to walk out with all the food? All of it? My kids haven't even eaten dinner yet. What are they supposed to eat?" I stopped and turned to face her, a slow, cold realization dawning on me. It wasn't about the insult. It wasn't about my pain. It was about the inconvenience. I looked down at the bags in my hands, the turkey, the stuffing, the potatoes. Then I looked back at the golden child, the one who had everything I ever wanted, complaining that her children might have to eat buttered bread for dinner. "You're right," I said, my voice dangerously sweet. "I am being selfish." And then I did something that shocked her, shocked myself, and set the final stage for the absolute destruction of my marriage. I held out one of the bags towards her. "Here," I said, "take this one. It has the turkey." Jessica's eyes widened, a flicker of triumphant relief crossing her face. She actually took a step forward, her hand outstretched to take the bag. She thought she'd won. She thought her entitlement, her complete disregard for my humiliation, had just secured her a turkey dinner. The sheer audacity of it was breathtaking. I let her get within inches of the bag, close enough that she could probably smell the roasted bird and my grandmother's secret herbs. Then I pulled it back. "But not for you," I said, my voice dropping to a near whisper. I turned and walked to the end of the hall, to the door that led to the building's trash chute. I could feel her confused, angry stare on my back. I opened the heavy metal door, ignoring the foul gust of air that wafted out. Jessica gasped, a sharp, theatrical sound. "What are you doing? Are you insane? That's the Thanksgiving turkey." Without a word, I opened the heavy grocery bag. I took out the massive Tupperware container, the one filled with 20 pounds of perfectly carved, juicy turkey that I had poured my heart into. I didn't hesitate. I tipped the container and watched as every last slice cascaded down the dark, cavernous chute, disappearing into the building's guts. The sound it made was a dull, final thud, echoing from floors below. A strangled sob escaped Jessica's throat. "I don't believe you," she stammered. "You psychotic bitch." I turned back to her, my face a placid mask. "I'm not psychotic, Jessica. I'm just done." I walked back towards her, holding the now empty grocery bag. I picked up the second bag, the one with all the side dishes, the stuffing, the potatoes, the casseroles that had taken me hours. I held it out to her again. "Don't worry," I said with that same chillingly sweet smile. "You can still have the sides." She stared at me, her mouth agape, utterly speechless. She was caught between her fury and her desire for the food. It was almost comical. Behind her, in the doorway of my apartment, Liam and Carol had appeared, drawn by the commotion. Carol's face was a thundercloud of rage. Liam just looked broken. I didn't wait for Jessica to decide. I knew she wouldn't touch it. I walked past them all, towards the elevator. My keys were in my pocket. My car was in the garage. I had no idea where I was going, but for the first time in 5 years, I felt completely and utterly free. The elevator doors opened with a quiet ding. As I stepped inside, I heard Carol's voice, sharp as broken glass, cut through the hallway. "Let her go, Liam. This just proves what I've always said. She's unstable. She was never good enough for you anyway." The elevator doors began to slide shut, but not before I saw the look on Liam's face. He wasn't looking at his mother. He was looking at me. And in his eyes, I saw not just panic, but a flicker of something else. Agreement. A silent confirmation of his mother's words. He wasn't going to fight for me. He was relieved. The problem was removing itself. The doors closed, sealing me in the small metal box, and as I descended, the weight of that realization was heavier than any bag of food. My marriage hadn't just been damaged by his mother's sentence. It had been a hollowed-out shell all along, and she had just been the one to finally knock it over. I drove for what felt like hours, with no destination in mind. The second bag of food sat on the passenger seat next to me, a silent testament to the evening's implosion. I ended up in the parking lot of a 24-hour supermarket, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. My phone had been blowing up, vibrating incessantly in the cup holder. Dozens of texts and missed calls from Liam. A few vitriolic messages from Jessica. I ignored them all. I sat there in the silence of my car, the adrenaline finally wearing off, leaving behind a deep, aching void. I had nuked my life. My marriage, my relationship with my in-laws, all of it gone, tossed down a trash chute with a turkey. Was I a monster? Had I overreacted? The questions swirled, but underneath them was a bedrock of certainty. I had done what I had to do. I had chosen self-respect over their acceptance. Finally, I picked up my phone. It wasn't to call Liam. It was to call the one person who had always been in my corner, no questions asked. My best friend, Maya. She answered on the first ring. "Oh my God, I was just about to text you. Happy Thanksgiving." "How did Operation Win Over the Witch go?" she asked, her voice bubbly. A single dry sob escaped my lips. "Maya," I whispered, my voice thick with unshed tears. "I need you." The cheerfulness vanished from her voice, replaced by razor-sharp concern. "What's wrong? Where are you? Tell me everything." And I did. I told her everything. The setup, the perfect meal, the single sentence, Liam's silence, the food, the trash chute, all of it pouring out of me in a ragged, breathless torrent. She listened without interruption, a furious, empathetic silence on the other end of the line. When I was done, there was a long pause. "Okay," she said finally, her voice hard as steel. "First of all, you are a goddamn legend. Second, where are you right now?" "Parking lot of a grocery store," I mumbled. "I don't know what to do." "Yes, you do," she said firmly. "You're going to drive to my place, and you're bringing the sides. My sad store-bought pie needs company, and then, tomorrow, we begin Operation Burn It All Down." A weak laugh escaped me. It felt good. "What's Operation Burn It All Down?" "Oh, you'll see," she said, a wicked glee in her tone. "Your mother-in-law wanted to talk about wasted nurturing and family legacies, right? Well, it turns out you're not the only one who has been keeping a very big secret from the perfect family." That night, sitting on Maya's couch wrapped in a fuzzy blanket, I ate my own sourdough stuffing out of a Tupperware container with a fork. It was the most satisfying meal I'd had in my life. Maya sat beside me, sipping wine and radiating a righteous fury on my behalf that was more comforting than any platitude. She let me cry, she let me rage, and then, when I was exhausted and empty, she laid out the plan. "Jessica's been having an affair," Maya said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "For over a year now, with her yoga instructor." I stared at her, my fork frozen halfway to my mouth. "What? How do you know that?" "My cousin is in her advanced vinyasa class. She's seen them, all over each other at a coffee shop afterwards, more than once. Apparently, it's the worst-kept secret in Lululemon." Maya topped off her wine. Carol goes on and on about the sanctity of family, about Jessica's perfect life and her two beautiful children. I wonder how she'd feel knowing her golden child is about to blow her own perfect family sky high. A cold, sharp clarity washed over me. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about exposing the grotesque hypocrisy that had been suffocating me for 5 years. Carol had built her matriarchal throne on a foundation of judgment and impossible standards, holding up Jessica's life as the ideal I could never achieve. It was all a lie. The next morning, I woke up with a purpose. I ignored the 100+ notifications on my phone and drafted a single email. The subject line was, "Family Matters." I sent it to Liam, Carol, Jessica, and Liam's father. The email was short and brutally precise. I started by formally announcing that I had moved out and would be filing for divorce, citing Liam's inability to stand by me as the primary reason. I explained that I would not be disrespected and that his family's approval was a currency I was no longer willing to trade my dignity for. Then I turned to Carol. "Carol," I wrote, "you built your family's identity on a pedestal of perceived perfection, and you used my personal struggles as a weapon to maintain that illusion. You were so concerned with the legacy from this side of the family. Perhaps you should be more concerned with the legacy Jessica is currently creating. While you were busy scrutinizing my wasted nurturing, she's been diligently nurturing a relationship with her yoga instructor for the past year. I wish her and her husband the best in navigating that particular family value." I hit send and turned off my phone. Maya and I spent the day watching terrible movies and eating the rest of the Thanksgiving sides. It was quiet. It was peaceful. It was the calm before the inevitable, glorious storm. By evening, I couldn't resist anymore. I turned my phone back on. The explosion had been nuclear. Voicemails, a string of texts that escalated from confusion to pure, unadulterated rage. Jessica's husband had apparently seen the email. The carefully constructed facade of the perfect family had been shattered by a single paragraph. But the most telling message was from Liam. It wasn't angry, it was pathetic. "How could you do this?" it read. "You've ruined my family." My family, not our family. My. That one word confirmed everything. I typed back a simple response. "No, Liam. Your mother ruined your family. I just turned on the lights so you could all see it." I blocked his number, and then I blocked them all. The weeks that followed were a blur of lawyers and packing boxes. I moved into a small, sunny apartment of my own. Liam didn't fight the divorce. He was too busy dealing with the implosion of his sister's marriage and his mother's subsequent meltdown. Through the grapevine, Maya's cousin, I heard that Carol wasn't speaking to Jessica. Not because of the affair, but because she'd been sloppy enough to get caught and humiliate the family. The hypocrisy was almost poetic. One afternoon, a few months later, I was unpacking the last box of my kitchen things. I pulled out the beautiful serving dishes from my wedding, the ones I'd been too scared to use for fear of Carol's judgment. I looked at them, not with sadness, but with a sense of reclamation. They weren't part of a life I was mourning anymore. They were just beautiful plates. My doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I looked through the peephole and my heart stopped. It was Liam's father, a man who had never uttered more than a dozen words to me at a time. I hesitated, then opened the door. He stood there awkwardly, holding a small potted orchid. He looked older, tired. "I hope this is okay," he mumbled. "I just wanted to... I'm sorry." He looked me in the eye. For all of it. For not speaking up. For letting Carol be Carol. What she said to you was unforgivable. And what you did... He paused, and a small, wry smile touched his lips. "While unorthodox, was completely justified. You deserved better." He handed me the orchid. "Liam is my son, and I love him," he said quietly. "But he's weak. He always has been. He let her break the best thing that ever happened to him. I just wanted you to know that someone saw it. Someone knew you were right." He didn't stay long. He wished me well and left. As I closed the door, I felt the last lingering threads of anger and hurt finally dissolve. I hadn't needed his validation, but getting it was a quiet, unexpected grace. I placed the orchid on my new kitchen windowsill where the sun streamed in. I had walked away from that Thanksgiving with nothing but a bag of side dishes, but I had gained everything: my peace, my self-respect, my future. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt completely and utterly nurtured.